Hi everyone, welcome to Horses to Watch. I'm David Aragona, and it's been a little while since we last recorded one of these videos. If you haven't tuned into Horses to Watch before, what this is basically just us watching some replays from the past week and making some trip notes together, just finding some horses that had trips that prevented them from achieving the optimal result in their races. Now, these are not necessarily horses that you have to bet back the next time that they run. It's just information that's going to enrich your handicapping in the future when these horses show up in the PPs. It'll just give you a better understanding of their form for future races. Maybe the next race is going to be a great time to bet these horses back off the trips that we discuss, but sometimes they aren't in another appropriate spot until 2 or 3 starts down the road. So definitely horses to keep tabs on, whether you do it in your virtual stable or make trip notes in DRF Formulator. It's a great way to keep track of the trip handicapping that you do. Well, let's kick off the first Horses to Watch of 2024 by talking about a race from Aqueduct. I'm somebody who does a lot of New York handicapping, so I like to focus on a lot of New York replays when I do this show. And we'll begin with the race from last Thursday, January 4th. It is race 5, a $25,000 claimer going 7 furlongs on the dirt. And let's break these horses from the gate, and we're going to focus on the number 2, Market Alert. Now, this horse breaks from the rail, as you see, as there was an entry in this race. And he gets into pretty good position, breaks with the field, tries to rush up and secure a position inside of that vanguard of leaders down the backstretch. But you can see, can't quite get up into that spot. So his rider, Ruben Silveira, is content to sit in behind that pack of runners. But you could see this horse is getting a little bit aggressive as they progress down the backstretch. He's running up on heels a little bit, refusing to settle as kindly as you would like to see for a horse that's traveling in that pocket position. Ultimately, though, he does settle down as the field moves around the far turn. But the thing that I want you to watch for as this field moves into the far turn is the position of this number 2, Market Alert, relative to the horses that finish ahead of him in this race, which are the number 3, Big Engine, and the number 9, Bust and Shout. He is ahead of them by about a length or a length and a half moving around the far turn. But you're going to see as this field comes to the quarter pole, these horses get into a bit of a traffic jam behind the leaders. And the horse that takes the worst of it is that number 2, Market Alert, and those 2 horses that are moving up on either side of him, they're going to get the jump on him right here as Market Alert is just stuck behind this wall of horses in traffic, nowhere to go, and he actually has to angle inside to follow the horse that was previously behind him, Big Engine, through that hole. And here he is finally finding a clear path at about the 8th pole of this race, and he's going to finish best of all across the wire, but unfortunately was prevented from winning this race because those 2 rivals that beat him to the finish line just got the jump on him at that critical stage of the race. This was a better than it looks 3rd place finish by Market Alert. This being a claiming race, he was up for the claim, of course, and was claimed out of this race for the $25,000 by trainer Mert Kantermachi, a trainer who is good off the claim. So he's definitely a horse that you want to look out for next time if he comes back at a similar claiming level. Going this distance between 7 furlongs to a mile, that seems to be the sweet spot for Market Alert, who did appear to be in good form coming into this race and ran one of his better races here, just did not get the trip that allowed him to earn the victory. Let's move on to a couple of other venues, and we're going to talk about 2 different races from different coasts on Saturday. We'll begin with a race from Gulfstream Park on January 6th, the Saturday card, race 9. It was a stakes event, the Ginger Brew Stakes, going a mile on the turf course. The rail setting on the turf this day at Gulfstream was 45 feet for those who want to note it, and we can break these runners from the gate. I want to focus on the number 6, Waskasoo, who was the favorite in this race, got bet down to 9-5 from a pretty generous 8-1 morning line. No surprise about that. She was a horse who was coming off an impressive maiden victory. But the thing that you want to note about the start of this race is that she got turned sideways at the start, got bumped outwards a little bit, and was just put behind the position that I think her rider, Junior Alvarado, wanted her to be in going into this far turn. So she broke at about last place, rushes up past the 3 horses into that clubhouse turn, but she's having to progress while racing wide. She's in the 3 path moving into the clubhouse turn onto the backstretch, never is able to get any significant cover in this race. And in turf racing, it's really important for these horses to coming from off the pace to get into some cover. And what that means is getting into a position where they can relax in behind another horse, have a horse to follow. And you can actually see on this head-on shot moving down the backstretch at Gulfstream that Waskasoo was all by herself out in the 3 to 4 path, nobody in front of her. So just racing a little bit too freely, and that can force horses to exert more energy than they otherwise would when they're covered up behind another runner following that horse. And you can see right here, Junior is trying to get this horse to go forward, get her into position to strike at the top of the stretch, but he's got to go 4 wide in doing so. Whereas the eventual winner of this race, the number 4, Ozara, that is her in the green silks and the yellow cap on the rail. She saves all the ground, and the rail opens for her at the top of the stretch, comes right on through, whereas Waskasu had to go 4 wide, is widest into the lane, and gets into second place here, but just does not have the energy left to go after that leader, and actually gets passed for second at the wire of this race by a horse who closes from towards the back of the pack. Some might view this as a disappointing third place finisher for a horse who did go off as the favorite, but given the trip that Waskasu got, the unfortunate start, going wide around both turns, there's an argument to make that she could have challenged for the victory in this race if the trip had worked out differently. Like I said, she had been an impressive maiden winner in her third career start when she got on turf for the first time, and I think that she's one that you want to give another chance at this stakes level next time out. Let's go to the other coast, out in California, and talk about a race from Santa Anita, also on last Saturday, January 6th. This was race 9, the final race of the day on that Saturday card at Santa Anita. It's an optional claiming 50,000, non-winners of one other than, going 1 1/8 on the turf course. And we're going to focus on 2 horses in this race before we show the start. Those are the number 4, Single Track Mind, and the number 12, Spagliato. And let's break these horses from the gate and first focus on that outside horse, the number 12, Spagliato, because you can see breaking on the dirt course, coming across that dirt crossing, this horse gets really tangled up in his legs coming out of the starting gate. The ground just broke away from him, and he really loses his footing at the beginning of this race and winds up much farther back in the pack than I think his rider, Flavien Prat, wanted him to be. And breaking from the outside post position, he really doesn't have many choices except to settle towards the back. He goes a little bit wide into the clubhouse turn, but ultimately is able to deftly maneuver his way down to the inside and saves good ground after that. Now, I didn't focus on the start of the number 4, Single Track Mind, the other horse that I want to focus on in this race, because he had a fine start, gets into decent position moving through the stretch for the first time, and actually you can see both of these horses towards the back of the pack. The 4, Single Track Mind, about third from last at this point, and Spagliato getting over to the inside, racing in last right now. The problem with the trip for Single Track Mind is he never saves any ground in this race, and this is a race where I think it was important to save ground, as it typically is in turf races at Santa Anita with those tight turns. And you can just look at the result of this race to see how important it was to save ground, because the 2 horses that complete the exacta in here are the number 5, Irish Prophet, who rides the rail the entire way, and the number 7, who's moving through along the rail, Maltese Falcon, right now. And both of those horses saving ground around both turns. Not the case for Single Track Mind. There he is, still third from last, and he is going legitimately 4 wide all the way around this far turn. When you watch the head-on of this race, it's pretty clear to see that he never has any cover around that far turn until about this point when they get into the stretch, and then he swings 5 wide to make that move into the lane, and he's going to pick up some good ground through the stretch. Never threatens the leaders because, like I said, those that were successful, they saved all the ground. Also take note of the number 12, Spagliato. That's him scooting up the rail to get into 6th place at the finish of this race. Actually, these 2 horses, the 4 and the 12, they basically hit the wire together at the end of this race. And I think it's a fair question to ask, who ran the better race between Single Track Mind and Spagliato? These are the difficult trip handicapping questions that we often have to answer when we're confronted with 2 horses that got very different trips, both obviously cost a better position by the trips that they got, but which is the one that you really want to upgrade next time if they come back in the same spot? What I'll say about that is that Spagliato is a horse that got the kind of trip that I think a lot of people are going to notice, that trouble at the start where he almost fell down and lost the rider. I think that's the kind of trip that a lot of handicappers are going to note for next time. I know that after this race, some commentators were making note of that trouble and really focusing on this horse. So he's one that might take money off of that trip. I'm not sure that's going to be the case for the number 4, Single Track Mind. Often these ground-losing wide trips are not trips that take the kind of money than those flashy poor starts or trouble in the stretch do. So I think Single Track Mind is a horse that you might want to take note of if he comes back in a similar spot next time, potentially running against Spagliato. Both of these horses have the potential to improve. Spagliato was first off a layoff in this race, likely to do better second time off the layoff for Jonathan Thomas. Single Track Mind going out for a lower profile barn, but one that's been in deceptively strong form recently. So I think both of these horses are ones that you have to consider in a similar similar spot next time. And then we'll close things out with a race from Aqueduct. I decided to revive Horses to Watch last week before this race was run, but I think it's appropriate that this race occurred on Sunday because I kind of have to include it in this video. And that, of course, is the debut of Crimson Light on Sunday at Aqueduct, a race that got a lot of people talking on social media. And it was the fourth race of the day on that January 7th card at Aqueduct. Let's break the runners from the gate, and we're going to focus, of course, on that number one Crimson Light and first show the head on. And you can see right here, he just takes that left-hand turn out of the gate and actually runs right into and hits that temporary rail that they put up to basically prevent horses from running into the gap. Well, he tried to do it. That rail prevented him from going off the course there, but it basically cost him all the momentum in the early stages of this race. And we're not going to show the pad of the start, but he basically just quickly exited the picture and was a good 15 to 20 lengths behind the leaders at this point in the race. And he's going to be off the screen for the majority of this race. What I will say about the rest of this field is this was a race that featured some pace. 23 and 2 might not seem like a fast opening quarter mile, but this was run over a very slow, sloppy track at Aqueduct on Sunday that was consistently producing slow times throughout the day. So this race is going to kind of fall apart in a general sense, even disregarding the trip of Crimson Light. The horse that actually finishes second in this race in the photo is the number 7, who currently is second to last and looks like the last horse on the screen until we see Crimson Light come back into the picture right here. And he's going to go widest into the stretch. Obviously had to do some work to even get into contact with the field at this point, but still Kendrick Carmouche hasn't really asked him for run yet, and he's going to come back into the picture right here, and you can see he's built up quite a bit of momentum. The leaders are obviously getting tired, but when he resurfaces about the 8th pole of this race, he's going to quickly pass these rivals coming onto the wire. There's a little bit of bumping coming onto the finish line. There was an inquiry and objection in this race, probably did not alter the result as he comes together with that eventual runner-up, the number 7, to finish off this race. Now, there's been discussion about what to really make of this performance by Crimson Light, because as I was alluding to, it was not the strongest New York bred maiden special weight race. The race only got a 57 buyer, a 71 time Form US speed figure. Those are not strong numbers for maiden races, especially maiden races in general, but even for this New York bred level, it's a fairly slow race. I don't think the speed figure, though, is really relevant for Crimson Light the way it would be relevant for the rest of the horses in this race. I mean, as you saw, he basically came to a stop coming out of the starting gate. So he basically gave everybody else in this field a head start. How much of a head start? It's a little bit tough to gauge that. What I will say is I looked at the GMAX chart for this race, which gives internal splits for each individual horse in each race. And he ran his first 16th of a mile. So the 16th of the mile at the beginning of the race that would account for that poor start. He recorded his between 1.6 and 2.2 seconds slower than everybody else in the field. So I guess it's reasonable to say that this horse could have run somewhere between 1.5 to 2.2 seconds faster if he had gotten a clean start. And if you were going to upgrade his buyer speed figure by that amount of time, that would be mean adding about 20 to 28 points to his speed figure. So that puts him at a buyer in about the low 80s or high 70s. That might seem fair, but that doesn't take into account the fact that he hit the rail at the start that could have caused the horse some physical or emotional stress that prevented him from running faster. It also doesn't take into account that he got a favorable pace setup after that trouble. So a lot of variables go into assessing a trip like this, and we're going to learn the most about Crimson Light when he comes back next time. The reality of horses like this is horses that are this green and have trouble at the start usually don't win their races because they're racing against better competition. And the reason that this horse got so much attention is because he did win the race. It was due to the competition, but this horse still has some talent. We'll see how much talent next time. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to Horses to Watch this week. If you want to follow these horses moving forward, you can go to your DRF.com account and add these horses to your horse watch. That'll give you emails to your email account when these horses are entered to run back in the future. You can also go in the DRF formulator and make trip notes that will show up in the running lines of your past performances about any of these horses if you have a DRF formulator or time form US subscription. So thanks for tuning in to Horses to Watch, and hopefully we get out a few more of these this winter.